And now I'd like to turn the floor over to someone who you haven't heard from in quite some time. Well, no, actually, I'm turning it over to Kelly here, my boss. And Kelly Murray is the Associate Director for Chemical Security, where she oversees a wide range of chemical security initiatives, including the currently lapsed Chemical Facility Anti-Terrorism Standards, the ChemLock Voluntary Program, and the proposed Ammonium Nitrate Security Program. Kelly, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone again. It's been a long time, hasn't it? So thank you again, and I'd love to just welcome you again to the Chemical Security Summit. We are so excited to have such a large group here in person, and I know an even larger group online. So again, just welcome. Cannot wait to dive into these 2.5 days of what really is a power-packed agenda. So thank you again for everyone coming, and we can go ahead to the next slide. Okay, so again, I wanted to touch on for a little bit, who is CFATs? What is CFATs? To just frame our mind again here on what we're talking about. So this map really just does a fantastic job to look at the facilities across the country that have reported their chemical holdings to the program. And we're talking about 45,000 facilities that have these dangerous levels of chemicals. This doesn't even count those facilities that are just below those screening threshold limits. This doesn't count those facilities that are exempt from CFATs, like the water wastewater facilities. These are those facilities that have threshold quantities of chemicals that we're concerned about. 45,000. And when you see this map, you really can see they are in every community. Of those, we do that risk tiering methodology, right? And we come up with the 3,200 high-risk facilities. Again, these are going to be in every community around the country. These are in every terrain. These face every weather impact. We've got facilities dealing with hurricanes right now, which is partly why our agenda had to shift. We've got facilities dealing with tornadoes, drought, wildfires, all kinds of different facilities coming across here. A facility in every state, and frankly, a facility in most territories. Go ahead to the next. That's 2,395 communities nationwide with high-risk facilities, or formerly with high-risk facilities. That is a pretty staggering number. Again, as Director Easterly was talking about, some of the program numbers here are really staggering. So keep in mind, again, 45,000 facilities with these chemical inventories, 3,200 high risk, and we're in 2,395 communities. Next slide. So how do we cover so many facilities? Well, reminder, we don't really cover just the chemical sector, right? We cover any facility with dangerous chemicals. So we are those smaller facilities that may just be a small mom and pop type shop. And then we've got the bigger chemical manufacturers. Here on this slide, you see some of the top types of facilities that CFATs previously regulated. Your chemical wholesalers, your manufacturers, your warehousers, your distributors, those we all think of. But there's a lot of others. The food manufacturers, the beer and wine manufacturers, some of my favorites, agricultural. We are across the country and in all of these different things. We have facilities in Hawaii where they're currently battling that situation. We've got facilities up in Alaska that we can't even inspect in the winter because you can't get to them. These are just the variety here. And then I want to remind you again what kind of chemicals we're talking about here. So these are our top tiered chemicals. And what you see on this list is, again, a pretty wide variety of concerns. CFATs regulated chemicals based on either a release, a theft aversion, or a sabotage concern. So a release, you're talking about a chemical that can either create a toxic plume and engage and harm the area at and around the facility, or you're talking about a flammable chemical that can turn into an explosive and harm that community right around that facility. Then you've got your theft aversion chemicals. Those are ones we're actually concerned about someone stealing, taking off site, and either manipulating it or using it as it is to harm another population. Think of a stadium. Think of a subway. Think of those attacks that you actually see abroad much more frequently than you see here because CFATS was working to protect those. The vast majority of our facilities are those theft diversion facilities, which really does mean even past the proximity that we're talking about in every community, those chemicals can be taken and used wherever those adversaries want to use them. That is in our community. They are making our community less safe. Again, I just want to highlight a couple of interesting ones here. Aluminum powder. We saw this one relatively frequently early on in the days of CFATS. We're seeing even more because of 3D printing. Who knew? So these different advancements, and one of the ways that CFATS was so unique was able to take considerations that were always standard and kind of bring them to the forefront. We were already covering these dangerous chemicals. They may start to be used for something different, but we had them covered. Next slide. So some more snapshots because I do love my data. We have a lot of facilities that report their chemicals and aren't ultimately high risk. For those facilities, we have them ranging from one chemical, a company that specializes in maybe manufacturing one chemical or using one chemical in their processing, all the way up to 31 chemicals of interest. Imagine the security posture for those facilities and how different it has to be to maintain that. Perhaps you can use an asset-based approach and have a very small storage locker for that one chemical. But if you've got 31, imagine the access control, the detection measures, the delay measures, the considerations that that facility might have to face that are so very different from the facility that might have one chemical. Similarly, we've got high-risk facilities with just one person. Technically, I think we've got some with 0 that don't even technically have a person on site. And then we have facilities with over 13,000 employees. Again, think of the considerations of how those different companies secure those chemicals in such different ways. 7,079 schools, colleges, or universities are within 1 mile of a high-risk facility. We're in every community. 381 hospitals are within 1 mile of a high-risk facility. Again, this just goes to show you how these dangerous chemicals that are needed for the economy, that are needed to continue to execute the nation's mission, are everywhere. And that is why CFATS was so well positioned to regulate them. Because through our risk-based and our performance-based regulation, we were able to tailor those security standards and those security measures to each individual facility and help to keep those communities safe. Couple other data points, because again, I just love my data. 14,105 inspections. That is a lot of inspections carried out by our chemical security inspectors. Keeping in mind, again, more than 1 in 3 of those actually identified an issue. 10,000, more than 10,000 compliance assistance visits. I love this comparison right here because we've done almost as many compliance assistance visits as we have done inspections. Public-private partnership. That's what that stat right there means to me. We've approved 4,269 security plans, and we've taken 108 enforcement actions. That one also, I think, points to we have a stick, but we don't use it very frequently because we do so many of those compliance assistance visits, because we partner with industry, and we only use that enforcement mechanism when we absolutely have to. Go ahead. And lastly, 494,611 names were being vetted against the terrorist screening database at the time of expiration. 494,611 names, individuals seeking or having access to these dangerous chemicals that we were vetting against the terrorist screening database. Go ahead. One more stat, actually like 6 more stats on one slide. As you heard Director Easterly state, on average, facilities increase their security posture about 58%. So we measure when a facility first submits their security plan into our program, and we measure when they get approved. And we're able to see that 58% increase in security. That is intrusion detection systems, access control, new restricted areas, new training programs, cybersecurity training and awareness, cyber vulnerability scanning, background checks, terrorist ties checks, a variety of different security measures that facilities have to enhance in order to achieve the CFAT standards. And yet they do that in that lower burden way by partnering with us and finding what works for their model. Under CFATs, high-risk facilities have put in place tens of thousands of security measures in enhancing their security. As I said earlier, we do about 160 compliance inspections a month, and 35% of those result in some sort of a finding, some sort of an issue, a violation with the standards. That means that, again, when a facility is most prepared for us, when they know we are coming, and when that inspector has called and told them everything that they need to know, we still find something 35% of the time. And that's actually 35% of facilities. A lot of times that's more than one item at a facility. So we are finding things through these recurring inspections and making sure that we are checking in and providing that value, providing that effectiveness. One of the other things that we talk about on inspections is our risk-based performance standard 9, where we expect facilities to prepare for response activities. And one of the critical elements to response is engagement with your local law enforcement, your fire, your community. And so we actually measure 98% of our facilities at that time had confirmed outreach with law enforcement. So what does that really mean? That really means that these 3,200 high-risk facilities are engaging on about an annual basis with their law enforcement to make sure that those folks know what is at that facility and how to appropriately respond. We've heard from so many facilities of how once DHS got involved or once they threw out their CFAT status, that law enforcement came to the table a lot more. And that is another benefit that CFATS was providing. 92% confirmed outreach with fire, and 58% had additional community outreach. Additional awareness to the community around them of the hazards that they presented, of how to keep themselves safe. Those numbers are also staggering to me. Incidents, we also talked to facilities about incidents. We have 135 incidents that we were tracking, 72 suspicious activities, and 60 cyber incidents that we identified while we were on those compliance inspections. I also love side on those incidents. That's actually one of the ways we get some of our best storytelling. We hear from the inspectors in their reports, we hear from industry about those incidents, we learn from them, and that's how we can produce more material and share more information. Go ahead. So 1 month ago, the CFATS program expired. Everything I just talked about went on hold. Everything that I just talked about is trending in the wrong direction. None of those numbers are going up. We're not vetting new names. We're not doing inspections. None of those numbers are going up. And every day that has an impact on our national security. And that is why, as Director Easterly said, we are urging Congress to take action as quickly as possible to reauthorize the program, because that gap continues. Go ahead. So what does that mean for your individual facilities? We are canceling inspections. We've canceled about 250 inspections so far. If you had a pending inspection, you've probably already heard from us. If it's a little bit further into September, you're about to hear from us. We're going to continue kind of canceling those and making sure that we're keeping you in the loop. We don't want any facility to be stuck in a situation where they have to change their travel at the last minute or anything like that. So we're working to cancel those inspections on a rolling basis. And we cannot conduct those inspections. So I know some folks have reached out and said, well, can you still stop by and check on this? We cannot conduct those inspections. We cannot do that activity. We've also had to halt all of our reviews. So we had hundreds of top screens and security plans in the review process. All of those are halted. If you had any that were in draft status that you were working on submitting, those are halted. You cannot take action on any of those plans. And that means we are not doing any risk assessments on those facilities. We cannot provide you that information. We cannot review those security plans and let you know our thoughts, our observations, our recommended actions. None of those reviews can continue. And to make sure that none of those reviews can continue, we shut down the system. I know the day after expiration, we had a lot of questions because we had a banner up on the chemical security assessment tool that said that CFATs had expired, and that caused a lot of questions. So we do understand that that has been confusing. We cannot open up the chemical security assessment tool, the CSAT portal right now. We cannot have anyone access that system. If you do want to access your information, you can email us at our cfats@hq.dhs.gov, and we can get you those security plans. We've heard from a lot of facilities that they use them. These are not something that went on the shelf and were ignored, that they actually use them as part of their planning. And so facilities are asking for those. We can provide you those PDF copies. You just need to email in and we can provide you that information. We cannot comment on them or provide you any thoughts on them, but we can provide you that information. And we cannot accept any new names for terrorist screening. That was also submitted via the CSAT portal, and we can no longer accept that information. The chemical terrorism vulnerability information, or CVI information, that has been a common question that has come up, and CVI was part of the regulation. So CVI cannot continue, and we cannot require enforcement of the protections of CVI information that we previously could, as that was part of the program. I can assure you that the department is doing what we need to do to protect that information. We're going to continue to protect that information, but we cannot create new CVI information, and we cannot enforce the requirements on protection of CVI at this time. We also cannot look towards the future in predicting CFAT's impact on your facilities. We've had a couple of companies reach out since the expiration, and many more before that, that used to take advantage of what we called hypothetical tiering. And this was something of a facility that wanted to get new chemicals or build a new facility. They wanted to understand whether or not they would be high risk under CFATs so that they could make the smart decisions now, save money by baking in security early as opposed to having to do it after the fact. And we cannot do that. We've actually heard from a couple of companies that I know are quite frustrated with that right now. And I wish we could. You can bet on that, but we cannot do the hypothetical tiering or provide that advanced security planning as it relates to the CFATS regulation. And there will be reduced coordination during emergency situations. We are working to identify what information we can appropriately share, but since CFAT's expiration, there are going to be limitations on the information that we can share during those situations. And certainly the reach out that we would normally do ahead of those situations, we won't be doing to the same level as we did under CFATs. Go ahead. So that's the real world kind of boots on the ground tactical level impact for facilities. Implications for communities, I think, go even a little bit further. Our database on those inventories is no longer up to date. We had 45,000 facilities that have submitted their information to us. That information is no longer valid as far as we know. We're not able to accept updates to that information. We're not able to accept new submissions from new companies. And one of the side aspects of this that I don't know if it's overly clear is that CFATs actually acted as a pretty good deterrent to adding more chemicals, increasing quantities, going higher in that concentration. Hydrogen peroxide was regulated at 35%. There's a lot of 34% hydrogen peroxide out there. We know that one for a fact. That doesn't mean anything anymore. Those companies could say, you know what, 35 was working for us, it's cheaper, I'm gonna go get it over there. They could start increasing their quantities. They could start increasing their concentrations. They could start stockpiling. And we wouldn't know. And there's no deterrent to it because they don't have to report to the department anymore. The information that we have out there is less up to date, right? We try and share information with our emergency responders. We're not going to be able to keep that information up to date, and we're not going to be able to require facilities to engage with their local law enforcement and first responders. We're also concerned that where CFATs acted to allow facilities on certain priority lists, that may be taken down as well. If they're not a high-risk facility under CFATs, they might not be added to those priority lists for certain situations, certain outreach, certain resources. Again, the facility coordination with local emergency responders is now completely voluntary. I encourage it. I absolutely encourage you to maintain those relationships. They are critical during those response situations, but it is completely voluntary at this point. And then we can no longer initiate any enforcement actions. So where facilities were non-compliant, and we know that 35% of those inspections that were stuck in that in-between stage, we know that there were issues there. Those corrections don't need to be made, and we do not have any enforcement capability on those. Go ahead. And then lastly, what does this mean for the country? So breaking it down really to kind of CFATs by the numbers, if you will. On average, we received 40 top screens a month. And we did those 40 risk assessments. It's 40 new facilities that could potentially be coming into our program. That's 40 facilities every month where we don't know those changing chemical quantities. And that was when CFATs was acting as a deterrent to changing those chemical quantities. I'm betting that that number is higher. 175 security plans not reviewed. On average, every month, we had 175 security plans that were submitted, that we were reviewing, looking at those different options, those security measures, and providing the recommendations and the approvals for those. 160 inspections not performed. We've hit on this one a couple of times, but again, 160 inspections, more than 1/3 of those result in an issue. So over 50 facilities every month, right now, this month, that have gaps, that are missing something that CFATs used to require. And 9,000 new individuals not vetted for terrorist ties. 300 names per day. That number is staggering to me. 9,000 new names. These are individuals having or seeking access to those dangerous chemicals. And this is when the CFAT's restrictions on access existed. So that number could actually be higher if facilities stopped implementing some of the access controls that were required under CFATs. Those are the daily impacts. We're basically talking about more than one top screen every single day. More than 300 names every single day. But there are also cascading effects that we are concerned about. Many in the room know we had a unified agenda listed for the Chemical Facility Anti-Terrorism Standards Notice of Proposed Rulemaking, CFATS NPRM. I'm going to say it faster now. The CFATS NPRM was aimed at looking at those Appendix A chemicals, what chemicals we are concerned about, what quantities we are concerned about, and updating that list. We are also looking at updating our performance standards. Our performance standards had been written in 2009. We wanted to update those performance standards, especially cybersecurity. While CFATS was performance-based, and that worked to our advantage where we could adapt to new technologies coming on and require the same security measures of a new technology, it certainly did not adapt from 2009 to presently without any changes. So that notice of proposed rulemaking was planned to go out this summer, fall. We cannot finalize that proposed rule with the expiration of CFATS. Any changes to the Appendix A list of chemicals, we cannot move on that. We cannot move on updating our cybersecurity standard. We cannot publish that during the expiration. And I have very serious concerns that the longer this lapse goes on, the longer that final rule is going to take to actually hit the streets when those things become effective. We're falling behind. We also had planned updates to our risk tiering methodology. We had promised you all years ago that we would look at our risk tiering methodology and make sure that our threat, vulnerability, and consequence were up to date on kind of a rolling 5-year basis or so. And that will include updates to our CSAT system. We cannot make those changes. We cannot look at the new population data, the new threat data. We cannot make any of those changes to make those adjustments. Enforcement, the longer those lapse continues, the less likelihood of us being able to kind of go back and correct those quickly. We talk a lot about what does it mean to turn the lights back on at CFATs, and we don't know, because we don't know what form reauthorization will take, and we don't know when it will happen. And until we know those things, we're not going to be able to turn the lights on quickly. This is not something that is easily updated. We are working through in the background our contracts and our team morale, our team consistency, and those things are changing on a daily basis. And without the program authorization, we can't get those things restarted and keep our team whole and continue to provide that level of service that we've provided. And then the national planning efforts. As I said, we share a lot of information. We collect a lot of information, but we work so well with our partner agencies at the state, local, federal level with all of you to make sure that we are coordinating as much as possible to help those national planning strategies and things like that. There's a lot of roles that CFATS plays actually behind the scenes, and our ability to share that information and to plan strategically ahead and make those adjustments is dwindling with every day that the program expires. All right, I'm going to flip it a little bit. I'm not a negative person, and it's killing me to be negative. We're going to talk a little bit about the future. What does the future hold? Without CFATs in mind right now, what is the team focusing on? What efforts are existing? And why, again, it's so critical for us all to be here this week and talk through some of these issues. So the program does still have the authority for the ammonium nitrate security program. The ammonium nitrate security program regulates the sale and transfer of ammonium nitrate. So this is a program that is more point of sale, that we are working on a supplemental notice of proposed rulemaking. It's listed in the unified agenda right now for September release. And that is a program that is, again, going to target kind of point of sale regulation specific to ammonium nitrate. And it's got a couple of requirements that we're working on building out. That is to register ammonium nitrate sellers and purchasers and vet them against the terrorist screening database. To create and maintain records of the sales and transfers, and to report theft or loss of ammonium nitrate. So we are working on that authority. We do have that supplemental notice that is in process right now, slated to publish in September of this year. Separately, we have our ChemLock program. Our ChemLock program, again, was stood up in 2021. It is a purely voluntary chemical security program meant to supplement CFATs. When we rolled ChemLock out, we kept talking about 3,200 high risk, but 45,000 facilities out there that have these chemicals. We want to help those other chemical companies do the right thing and enhance their chemical security as well. So it is a no-cost solution. There are free resources, tools, training, exercises, assessments available. We do have a session coming up, I'm not sure which day, on ChemLock that's going to talk about a case study where we did an on-site assessment. I really encourage folks to look at those resources when you have some time. And then impacting the global community. We've said for years, my predecessor used to say for years that DHS and CISA is leading the world in chemical security. And we really were leading the world in CFATs, which is why it's so disappointing. But we do continue to be an excellent partner and a co-implementer of the Global Congress on Chemical Security and Emerging Threats. where we work with our partner agencies and our industry partners and government, academia, law enforcement, all sorts of individuals through the Global Congress to look at this problem globally and provide those recommendations, share our lessons learned, where CFATs is looked at as a model that other countries want to adopt. And we're looking to learn from them and build that culture of chemical security. And then lastly, I'll just talk about this week. I'm so excited. So excited that you all are here, that you all are online to tune in and see some of the amazing things that we've done with this agenda. We have so many exciting opportunities. I think the team every year hates when I talk about, I want something new. What else new can we do? What other new things can we do? And we've got a lot of new this week. So we've got an AI. I know artificial intelligence is very top of mind for CISA. It's very top of mind for our industry partners. It's going to be an amazing session. We've got a session called Wicked Problems. So kind of those unsolvable problems that you as industry face and how we can help with some of those and some interesting industry takes on those. I've heard some of them, they're quite unique and interesting. So that one's going to be an amazing one. We have our Fed Expo that I'm really excited about, going to be that opportunity to truly network, bring folks together. Of course, our speed meet. And I've also never been speed dating, but I imagine it's pretty close. So I'm really excited about that. We've got just a variety of stakeholders that are going to be presenting their key information. So you'll hear from us, but you're going to hear from your industry partners. You're going to hear from your first responders. Academia is here to speak. We're going to have an amazing threat briefing coming up. Extreme weather, I know that one was a big hit last year. We've brought that one back and allocated more time to it. So we're really excited about that session. But overall, I just want to encourage you all again to participate, to ask your questions while you are here. That's what we are all here for, to find those amazing network opportunities. Now more than ever, this public-private partnership is so important. I have said on every webinar that we've done that I am disheartened by the CFAT's expirations, but I am heartened to all of your response to it. The stories, the feedback, the appreciation, it really does show our public-private partnership and how we're in this together, and we're going to come out of it even better. So with that, I will close and take any questions. Everybody's like, no, we heard from you long enough. You can raise your hand if you have a question and a mic will come around. Oh, we got one over here.
Hi, Ellen Gilmer from Bloomberg. I just wanted to ask, can you give us an update on how conversations are going with your partners on Capitol Hill? And do you think this is close to resolution?
I would never speculate how conversations necessarily go and what actions ultimately come out of them. I do know our legislative affairs is engaged with the House and the Senate, both sides, majority and minority. We're having those conversations, and I am hopeful, but I would never speculate as to how or when it would come to resolution, unfortunately. Right behind you.
Good morning, Rick Steele, Norion Chemical. CFAT comes back under, let's say, a different name. You think the CVI will transfer over, or the fast track, or all the information will be lost and regained? And depending on how long it, I guess you can speculate.
Yeah, it's a tough question to answer, right? I am hopeful that we will get CFATs back in its current existence. And I am hopeful that we will do as much as we can do from CISA to continue the mission where we left it off and to not lose any ground. And that includes all of the previous regulations and expectations. That is our hope. That is our desire. CISA overall is urging Congress to take action. We have bills out there that can just reinitiate CFATs and reauthorize CFATs. That is our hope. Should we get a different authorization that says something completely different, we would have to evaluate as it comes and figure out how we move forward. I know that's not a very satisfying answer. Other questions? Is everyone just going to tackle me in the hallway? Yes, I just got some nods to that. I'm scared now. Thank you for that. I think we have just a couple more minutes if we have any other questions. Questions on the webcast? Did they even know they could ask questions on the webcast? Now they're going to start flying in. Oh, we got one up here. I was just about to give up on it.
Hi, Brian Humphreys from Congressional Research Service. Just wondering from the appropriations, actually an authorization side for this, what happens to all your FTEs that are working on chemical security if this becomes prolonged past the end of the fiscal year, et cetera, et cetera? What does it look like for personnel retention, keeping the expertise in-house?
So right now, we have a lapse in authorization. I want to make this clear. We have a lapse in authorization. We do not have a lapse in appropriations. So right now, we are executing the same funding levels. All of our personnel are maintained. They are currently working on the voluntary chemical security initiatives. When the new funding comes, we will have to see what that comes with. If we have authorization and appropriations, if we have the same level of appropriations, but no authorization, or if our appropriations did go down. I do have significant concerns that we will lose team members during this uncertainty as this lapse continues, and certainly if it continues past the fiscal year. But until we see what the numbers are for appropriations or authorizations, I couldn't answer any specifics. One last call before I get tackled in the hallway. All right, thank you all so much for coming. Appreciate it.